I still remember the screams that echoed across Maple Ridge Estates that day. Our perfect suburban paradise, with its manicured lawns and identical mailboxes, transformed into complete chaos in seconds one moment. We were welcoming international royalty to our neighborhood the next. Our HOA president, Diane, was flinging water at a dignified man in ceremonial robes, while cameras flashed from every direction. The crowd gasped collectively as if someone had sucked all the oxygen from the air before anyone could process what happened. Police sirens blared, and Diane, our infamous HOA, Karen, was being led away in handcuffs, her mascara streaming down her face. Let me back up and explain how we got there. I've lived in Maple Ridge Estates for 3 years now. It's one of those upscale neighborhoods where every blade of grass has to meet the precise height requirement, and God forbid you choose the wrong shade of beige for your exterior paint. Diane Peterson had been running our HOA with what I can only describe as dictatorial enthusiasm. Since before I arrived, she carried our neighborhood covenant. Like some people carry religious texts, always ready to quote chapter and verse about proper trash, compliment, or acceptable holiday decoration timelines. Most of us just tried to stay off her radar. I'd gotten on her bad side 6 months earlier, when I installed solar panels on my roof despite having all the proper approvals. Diana insisted they weren't the right aesthetic for the neighborhood. She left passive-aggressive notes on my door weekly, each one ending with her signature phrase as, "Your HOA president." I must remind you that property values are everyone's responsibility. I had complied with every ridiculous rule submitted, every form in triplicate, and still somehow managed to become her personal project. The whole royalty visit caught everyone by surprise. Our city had been selected as part of an international cultural diplomacy tour, and the royal family of a small but wealthy European nation wanted to see a typical American suburban community. Somehow our neighborhood had been chosen, and the excitement was palpable. Everyone except Diane. That is the moment she heard about the motorcade coming through our main entrance and proceeding down Oak Lane. The street she happened to live on, she lost her mind. "This is private property," she kept saying during our emergency HOA meeting. "They can't just parade through here like they own the place. What about security? What about property values? What about my alias that I just planted along the curb?" She stood at the front of our community center, her blonde bob haircut, still thanks to what must have been half a can of hairspray, jabbing her finger at a neighborhood map. "I won't allow it as president of this HOA. I simply cannot allow it." The rest of the board tried reasoning with her. This was good publicity for our neighborhood. The royal family was bringing a charitable donation for our community garden project. There would be security and city officials handling everything, but Diane wouldn't budge. I watched from the back row as her face grew increasingly flushed. "If the rest of you want to roll over for these foreign dignitaries, fine. But my section of Oak Lane is under my jurisdiction, and I will be enforcing our no solicitation and no trespassing policies to the letter with that." She stormed out, her heels clicking aggressively against the tile floor. Over the next week, Diane launched what I can only describe as a suburban guerrilla campaign against the royal visit. She sent daily emails to everyone in the neighborhood with subject lines like "Urgent private property rights under attack" and "Stand firm against royal intrusion." She put flyers on windshields warning about the traffic nightmare and security risks the visit would bring. Most people just rolled their eyes and threw them away. Some of us started keeping copies for what we called the Diane Peterson Archives of Insanity, 2 days before the scheduled visit. I was mowing my lawn when Diane marched up my driveway with a clipboard. "As your HOA president, I'm collecting signatures to formally protest this invasion of our privacy." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes were cold as ice. "Sorry, Diane," I replied, turning off my mower. "I actually think it's pretty cool that they're coming here. It's just for an hour, and think about how it'll boost our property values." I knew mentioning property values was like speaking her love language. Her smile vanished instantly. "I see you're still not a team player. First those hideous solar panels, and now this betrayal. I've been monitoring your lawn. You know it's a quarter-inch above regulation height on the north corner." She made a note on her clipboard with such force, I thought she might tear through the paper. The morning of the royal visit arrived, and it was picture-perfect blue skies, 72 degrees with a light breeze that made the neighborhood flags flutter. Just right news vans had set up at the community entrance, and excited residents lined the streets with small flags to wave. Children sat on parents' shoulders for a better view. Everyone was in good spirits chatting with neighbors. They normally just waved to from their cars. Everyone except Diane. She had transformed her front yard into some kind of protest zone. She'd set up orange traffic cones across her portion of the sidewalk and strung yellow caution tape from her mailbox to a tree. Handwritten signs shouting private property and no trespassing, highway enforcement zone were staked into her immaculate lawn, violating at least 3 of her own HOA regulations, I noted with irony. But the piece to resistance was Diane herself standing guard at the edge of her property line, in a red blazer and white pants garden hose in one hand and a large plastic bucket in the other. She was filling the bucket methodically, her eyes fixed on the neighborhood entrance where police motorcycles had just appeared, signaling the motorcade's arrival. I moved closer, feeling a strange combination of fascination and dread. "Diane," I called out, "what exactly are you planning to do with that water?" She turned to me with a smile that sent chills down my spine. "Just maintaining my property. Sometimes unwanted visitors need to be reminded that they're trespassing. A little water. Never hurt anyone." Her voice was eerily calm. "You can't be serious," I said, lowering my voice as neighbors were starting to notice us. "There are diplomatic immunity laws. You could cause an international incident." "I know my rights," she snapped back. "This is America. My property line extends to the middle of the street, and I have documentation to prove it." Before I could argue further, the crowd erupted in cheers. The motorcade had turned onto our street. 3 black SUVs followed by an elegant vintage car, flying a small foreign flag. City officials walked alongside and news cameras captured it all. The procession moved slowly, allowing the royal visitor, a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing traditional ceremonial robes, accented with what looked like actual gold thread, to wave at residents through his open window. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion as the royal car approached Diane's property line. She stepped into the street, bucket in hand. I lunged toward her, but was too late. With a banshee scream that silenced the entire crowd, she flung the entire bucket of water directly at the open car window. "This is private property," she shrieked as water drenched the royal visitor, his elegant robes now soaking wet for one terrible second. Nobody moved, then everything happened at once. Security personnel surrounded the car. Police officers who had been escorting the motorcade immediately moved toward Diane. The crowd gasped collectively, and several people started recording with their phones. The royal visitor himself appeared momentarily shocked before his security detail covered him with umbrellas and jackets. "You are trespassing on private HOA property," Diane continued to shout as 2 officers approached her. "I am the president of this association. I have every right." Her protests were cut short as they firmly took hold of her arms, informing her she was under arrest. "You're detaining me for what?" she demanded, her voice cracking with indignation. "For protecting my property from foreign invaders, ma'am. You're being arrested for assault on a diplomatic visitor, disorderly conduct, and interfering with a city-sanctioned event," one officer explained calmly, while another recited her Miranda rights. The crowd had gone from shocked silence to a low murmur, and I could see neighbors filming everything. Diane's face had transformed from righteous anger to dawning horror as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "This is ridiculous. I know my rights. I'll sue all of you." Her voice had lost its authoritative edge and now sounded shrill and desperate. What happened next was even more surprising. The royal visitor, after briefly conferring with his aides, stepped out of his car, still dripping wet, and approached the officers with Diane. He raised his hand and everyone fell silent. "Please, it is no problem," he said in accented but clear English. "In my country, water is a symbol of purification." He smiled graciously. Perhaps this lady was offering a traditional American welcome. There was a gentle ripple of laughter from the crowd, but the police weren't having it. "I'm sorry, Your Highness, but assault on a diplomatic visitor is a federal offense. We have to take her in." As they led Diane to a patrol car, the most remarkable moment occurred. The HOA vice president, Michael, stepped forward with a folder. "Officers, before you go, you should know something." He handed them what I recognized as our neighborhood property records. The street that Miss Peterson claims as private property was actually transferred to city ownership 3 months ago. When our HOA failed to pay the proper municipal taxes, he glanced at Diane, something our president neglected to mention at our meetings. Diane's face went from crimson to ghostly white in seconds. That's impossible. I never approved any transfer. Her voice had risen to a nearly hysterical pitch. That's the thing, Diane, Michael continued loud enough for everyone to hear. After you missed filing our tax exemption paperwork for the second year in a row, the city automatically converted our streets to public property. We voted on accepting this change last month at the meeting you skipped to attend your spa weekend. He smiled apologetically at the officers. So not only was there no trespassing, but Ms. Peterson actually assaulted a diplomatic guest on public property. The crowd erupted in a mixture of gasps and barely suppressed laughter. Camera flashes intensified as Diane was placed in the back of the police car. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair, now disheveled mascara streaking down her cheeks, 3 weeks later after a lightning-fast legal proceeding, expedited due to the international attention. Diane faced the consequences of her actions. The judge showed no sympathy, sentencing her to 6 months in county jail, a $25,000 fine for diplomatic assault, and 3 years of probation as the gavel came down. Diane's face crumpled in disbelief. Her whispered, "But I was just protecting our property values," echoing pathetically in the now silent courtroom.